Okay, we are live, but we're going to let it breathe. Ladies and gentlemen, just for a moment, bring on Facebook and Instagram and all those people, making sure that those Facebook channels connect. It's been a problem lately, as you guys know. Okay, we're good on YouTube. That's a plus. Waiting to see the green light. Hang tight, guys. Instead of getting into it and then pausing, I'm just waiting to see for sure that we are in. And I think we are. So, that being said, welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest. You know him. You love him. He's got his setup working again. Zack Kelberman, brother. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing so much better when I'm not using a iPhone to do a podcast, Chad. Everything's working tonight. I appreciate you, you all, including you, Chad, my partner in crime here, hanging with me. Tough. I'm ready to talk about a lot of rumors, a lot of juicy information leading up to free agency and the draft for the Broncos.
Shouts to David Youngkin getting in first on YouTube. Alberto, we see your question. We'll try to get to you tonight, big dog. MBLE text prep, what's up? Says, how about this? Trade up, draft Shedeur Sanders to give Bo some competition. Got to remind him that the NFL stands for not for long and to keep playing well or else. That's kind of funny. It was interesting listening to Shedeur Sanders speak. I would say he had the second biggest media scrum at the Combine, Zach, behind only Travis Hunter.
Genty was close.
Genty, yeah, they were probably sixes, huh? Genty and Sanders were probably about the same. Maybe Genty, actually, I don't know. It was about the same. But he sounds like a younger version of his dad, but not quite as, prime time. He still has that swag, don't get me wrong, but I'm happy with who the Broncos have, Zach, for what it's worth at quarterback. Not looking to make any power moves to try and land Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, good talent. You wonder about his attitude. I heard some not so flattering things coming out of the Combine, that he was a little arrogant in some of his interviews and kind of just being Shedeur Sanders. And if he didn't go to Colorado, would Broncos fans still want the Broncos to make him a backup to Bo Nix? Let's be honest, he's not going to be a backup in the NFL with his last name being Sanders. He's going to get a chance to start. The Broncos have their franchise quarterback. All they need, Chad, is a very vanilla, nondescript backup, whether that's Stidham, Zach Wilson, whoever.
We have the Papa Bear, David McElrath, jumping in before we even went live, as he often does, to support MHH with a super chat.
Thank you, David.
Love you. Appreciate you, David. He says, good evening, Broncos family. Hashtag God bless the USA. Let's go, Bo. MHH for life. Buckham ×3. Denver Broncos for life. SEAL Team Knicks. Yeah, you need to talk to MBLE test prep. That's a tough one, dude. You throw that X in there in between MBLE and test, and it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a pitfall there. But Papa Bear, thank you, buddy. So good to see you. Shiloh, great to see you as well tonight. Says Nick and Eric gave some good options in their mock this morning. Looking forward to hearing the priest break it down. Yeah, we want to tonight. We do want to get to Eric's post-combine mock. Now, we're not planning on doing a live mock tonight, in case you maybe thought that's what we were doing. We're not doing a live mock. But, Zach, maybe it's something we should consider doing, you and I. Maybe like a 7-round mock. No offense to the draft dudes and the morning guys. God bless them. We need that level of scrutiny on the draft. But for us, I think maybe doing like a 3-round mock live would be fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for that. We have differences of opinions on staff. Some people want the Broncos to go against the grain. Others want the Broncos to go with the grain. But, Chad, I'm down for sure. Let's do it.
So here's what I want to touch on first, and then we'll kind of let people get in the room and get the conversation rolling in the chat. But I want to bring up Dylan Von Arx, of course, helps us always on YouTube with the monitoring the chat, and then the co-host of the Orange and Blue View podcast. He had a really interesting article today, 3 wildcard options for the Broncos in round 1. And listen, up to this point, we've talked a lot about it on just about every podcast, Zach, since the season ended. Joker, right? Running back, wide receiver, tight end, but especially running back, tight end, as it relates to Joker. And a lot of the scrutiny at the Combine, Zach, and the focus what we had was on running backs, tight ends. And we know it was we're following where the Broncos are going. We know that a third of their meetings at the combine were on running backs, tight ends. So that's obviously on the brain, but it's a very deep class at both those positions. So if you're the Broncos, even though you're in the market for a back and for a tight end, this might be the type of draft where, because it's so deep, you go with a different premium position in the first round, because you can dip throughout on a very deep class at those positions. So it's kind of the idea and what Dylan is getting at. And the first option he brings up, Zach, is the safety from South Carolina, Nick Emenwari, as a kind of wild card option at pick 20. What would your thoughts be?
Yeah, we talked about him last night a little bit. If the Broncos don't get a tight end or running back of their choosing, they could go in a different direction. And I would not shed any tears if Emenwari was the pick, because just like a tight end and running back, it might not be talked about as much, but it is still a need nonetheless for the Broncos. PJ Locke doesn't deserve to start next to Brandon Jones. They need someone there, and Emenwari would give them quite the tandem in that back end when you pair the safeties with Patrick Surtain and Riley Moss and McMillian and everybody else. So, Chad, it's not my number one, but it's not my, plan Z either. I like Emenwari a lot.
I do too. He and Malachi Starks at the top of the safety class. For what it's worth, Emenwari, 6'3", 220 pounds. Let's see, his 40, Zach, he ran a 4.38. So the dude's got some afterburners. And look, seeing PJ Locke constantly getting beat last year over the top and just always being a step or two behind whoever he was chasing, you're going to have some growing pains if you draft Emenwari to come in and step in and be a starter out of the gates. But that speed he brings to the table, Zach, and as Dylan writes here, he also in the long jump, 11'6". So he's got some explosion to him and some strength. He put up the most reps on the bench amongst safeties with 20 reps.
And physically, what more could you want from a safety prospect? He's going to have to pass the mental check, breaking down stuff in the classroom, the whiteboard, personal and interpersonal interviews. But based on the physical specs alone, Chad, this is quite the prospect.
What do you guys think of Emenwari, huh? Tell us in the chat. Eric Flynn jumping in with some stars. What's up, dude? Great to see you on Facebook tonight, my friend. Great to see Roy. What's up, buddy? Great to see Taylor as well. Taylor Christensen in the house. Okay, and we'll take a pause for a second on Dylan's article. Taylor Christensen jumping in with a super. Thank you, buddy. Really, really appreciate you. He says, draft our backup QB. If not, sign
Desmond
Ritter.
Nope.
Also, with Debo traded and T. Higgins franchise tagged, who do we go after at wide receiver? Sutton needs another elite receiver next to him. Zach, my heart has kind of been set on Chris Godwin, but a lot of the buzz indicates he's not going to end up leaving Tampa Bay, and we'll see. We'll see if that comes out on the wash, because they got to make some decisions and prioritize their cap, and he's coming off of a season mostly lost to that dislocation, but he was on a tear, Zach, before he got hurt. So what's your answer here for Taylor in terms of receivers, and then we can talk about backup quarterback?
Yeah, I don't know that you can pay Chris Godwin. He's a fantastic receiver, but you're going to have to deal with the Courtland Sutton extension, as the Broncos talked about at the Combine, at some point here soon, Chad. And I saw that Mike Kliss wrote recently that the Broncos are expected to sign a receiver of note, quote unquote. We don't know who that is yet. Devontae Adams is going to get cut by the Jets, it seems like, so that's an option. But do you want that cancerous attitude in the locker room infecting the younger receivers? I don't know. I think if they do venture out into the open market for a wideout, they're going to sign like a Darius Slayton, like a tier B, tier C kind of guy, Chad.
As far as backup quarterback, it's an option. I think they'll end up re-signing one of Stidham or Wilson for what it's worth. But if they were to draft a guy for a developmental option, a couple of the dudes that Scott and I watched up close in Mobile might make sense way later on in the draft, like Notre Dame's, what's that kid's name? Riley Leonard, Tyler Shuck. Don't be mystified by his name. It looks like Shao, but you pronounce it Shuck, from Louisville. He's interesting later, but I don't know, Zach, that you need to invest any draft picks in a quarterback when you have Bo Nix. Go out and get a stopgap that can thrive in Peyton's system, that has some NFL experience. Keep that floor as high as you can keep it. If, Bo Nix is out a week or 2 weeks or whatever, I think it makes more sense. That's not to say they won't bring guys in that are young or rookies. They absolutely will, because Zach, they have only one quarterback under contract.
Yeah, I am 100% right there with you, Chad. And Taylor, no hard pass on Desmond Ridder. I don't want the DoorDash driver backing up Bo Nix. There's nothing that Bo Nix can gain from that. But, say what you want about someone like Jarrett Stidham or even a project like Zach Wilson. Their experience provided excellent sounding boards for Bo Nix. Bo Nix talked about that. Sean Payton talked about that. The quarterback room was very close. Sean Payton called it unique. And like Chad said, I think one of Wilson or Stidham will return to fill that QB2 role.
We shall see. Yeah. Todd saying, Ostendorf saying Godwin is the answer. It's just a matter, I can tell you, dude, if he hits the market, the Broncos will kick those tires, okay? He would be just an absolute beast for Sean Payton, but you start getting into and Bo Nix, but you start getting into that territory of what's he worth, because it's not in a vacuum or even a normal off-season free agent thing, kind of like you saw. It's unfortunate when they're coming off an injury, Zach, and they hit free agency. So we'll see, but Godwin is really interesting to me. But when we go back to the conversation, we'll grab this from David Youngkin first, and then we'll go back, who says, with a super chat, thank you, David. Really appreciate you, big dog. Really appreciate you. And by the way, guys, we're doing a jersey giveaway for the super chat superstars on Thursday night. So be ready for that. Be in the room. Got to be in the room to qualify and win it. If your name gets, if you get the random selection. So be here Thursday night. But David says a veteran receiver is fine, but this is a new culture. You can't just put any receiver, running back, or tight end on this roster. Well, I mean, that's the whole idea of trusting your front office and your coaching staff, Zach, is to identify the fits. George Payton talked about at different points since he's been GM that the Broncos want to be in on every deal, right? They at least want to know the lay of the land. The Debo thing, we know they at least check the temperature on that. Reporters, true insiders like Benjamin Albright say the Broncos were never seriously pursuing it. They may have called Zach and checked on it, but you got to trust, Zach, that Sean Payton, when they identify a receiver, he knows what he's looking at.
Yeah, David, you're right here. Someone like Devontae Adams, for example, he's going to become available because he's getting older. He has attitude concerns. He's probably seen his prime past him already. Debo, he hasn't been good in 4 years, arguably. Someone like Cooper Kupp is always injured. So if you can play, you can play. You can help out the Broncos offense and what they're looking for from their joker, quote unquote. It's what Sean Payton wants. But you, like Chad said, you have to find the right mix of intelligence, the love for football, and also the upside. You don't want to bring someone in like Adams, for example, where it'd be diminishing returns, or Debo Samuel, diminishing returns. You give up a draft pick, you take on that salary, and you can't rely on him. That's why, Chad, I'm an advocate of just finding this guy on the draft. Use multiple draft picks if you have to, but draft.
David, thank you, buddy. We have a very generous super coming in.
Whoa, Michaela.
From the Duchess from the top rope. Boom.
Thank you, Michaela.
Love you, Michaela. Hope you're doing well and that your week is getting off on the right foot. So good to see you. And in case you missed it, we're doing a jersey raffle on Thursday night for the Super Chat Superstars. So can't wait to see you there. But she says, I wonder if we're better off getting a receiver in the draft versus signing one in free agency. I really want to address inside linebacker, safety. It's, for example, in free agency. And there are some great options. Zach Bond, Nick Bolton, at linebacker, Zach, at safety. You got Javon Holland. I always botch the dude's name. Thank you, in San Francisco. But there are some options there. Your thoughts for Michaela?
Absolutely right, Michaela. Thank you so much. As always, I love repeating myself because I love being able to thank you for your generosity each and every night. I'm right there with you. And even Mike Kliss wrote, Chad, that don't be surprised if the Broncos reel in one big fish on the open market. That fish is going to play inside linebacker. You mentioned two names, Bolton, Zach Bond. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, Michaela, I've been saying this for quite a while. I'm glad some people are coming around. Spend the money on the defense and free agency, and then the other resources, the draft, use that to build up the offense.
Indeed. And that kind of ties in a little bit to what we're going to talk about next in terms of, options in the draft versus free agency. I mean, we just touched on the big names at the position of linebacker and safety and free agency, but we've got a couple options to weigh in the balance here that Dylan offers as wild cards. So stick with us here, Michaela. Love you so much, my friend. Thank you,
Michaela.
And before we dive back in, Cody Dub jumping in as well with a super. Thank you. So good to see you, Cody. Says Adams, Devontae Adams, that is, would get a rude awakening by Sean Payton. And on that subject, real quick, kind of not Adams, but just free agency recruitment. The Broncos are a thing again. And that the fact that they're a winning team, they've got an interesting young quarterback with some momentum, especially on the offensive side, Zach. They're going to, I think, be able to do pretty good in recruiting free agents to come to Denver because they also have the deep pockets cash-wise of the Walton Penner group and plenty of cap room, 40+ million. So your thoughts here, though, for Cody. Adams would get a rude awakening from Sean Payton.
Why even waste the time trying to give him that awakening, though? I want to pull up really quickly, just so in the interest of factual information, his age. He's 32. He's going to be 33 years old in December, and he has attitude concerns. Again, he's past his prime. So why would you want to gamble on that? And as we learned with Sean Payton, Chad, I don't think he's a fan of players that are perceived to be arrogant or self-centered. Me first. Stop kissing babies comes to mind with Russell Wilson. So, you want another receiver. I understand that completely. Build the nest around Bo Nix, but you can find that receiver in the draft. You don't have to, I guess, punch down by going after a 32-year-old Devontae Adams.
Thank you, Cody, buddy. Good to see you. We also have Phil McLaughlin checking in. What's going on, Tucson Phil? Thank you, buddy. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. I would like to see Mbao or Jordan James join the Broncos. Yeah, interesting players, both of them. And, James, we know, James did have a formal with the Broncos at the Combine. So he has a little bit of experience playing with Bo Nix at Oregon. Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life, Broncos for life. Your thoughts, Zach?
Yeah, I totally co-sign what you said on James, and I want to add on Mbao.
I think
it sounds like an ad lib from a rapper, but if they want to build the trenches, that's one way to go about it. I did like how he tested at the Combine, Chat. I think his stock is on the rise. They don't have a 5th round pick as it currently stands, so whether you reach for him or not, could be a guy on the Broncos' radar.
He's currently rated on the mock draft consensus big board as the 4th best interior offensive lineman, the Purdue kid Mbao, behind, as far as the mock draft database has it, Tyler Booker of Alabama, Gray Zabel of North Dakota State, and Donovan Jackson of Ohio State. But Jared Wilson's another guy to keep an eye on because he had also, Zach, one heck of a combine.
And according to Peter Parker, Spider-Man himself, it's pronounced Bow. The M is silent. So Marcus Bow.
There you go. One thing I remember,
pronunciation was never our strong suit on this show, Chad.
Well, not only that, but like help a brother out. You know what I mean? Like when we were, I remember at the 2019 Combine, got to offensive line day. The last day, I think that, pretty sure it was the last day, and Dalton Reisner, right, who became the Broncos' 2nd round pick, one of 2 2nd round picks that year. He stands up to the podium, and even though they have their name spelling on a little placard card that they move up and down. Am I freezing right now? Did my camera just freeze?
Yeah, temporarily.
All right. I think I have too many windows up. But anyway, we'll grab this and then a quick matter of business. But Dalton Reisner, he stood up and because his name was questionable. People were calling him Risner, if you recall, as a draft prospect. He stood up like roll call, dude. Dalton Reisner, offensive line, Kansas State or whatever. Was it Kansas or Kansas State? Kansas State. And so you're like, okay, yeah, it's Reisner to take that note before you start asking questions. But we appreciate the help on that.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? Save us a lot of headaches on the pod.
Guys, lots more to get to tonight. Trust on that. But hey, football for now, it's in the books, but let not your hearts be troubled because the sports machine rages on. You got basketball still going. You're going to have here soon March Madness. So we're here to help give you that alley-oop opportunity to win money from watching sports with Underdog. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps you can play now in your state. If you want to win up to 1,000 times your money, you got to give it a shot with Underdog.
To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like points, assists, rebounds, and more. Underdog's got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your B-ball knowledge.
That's right. I have had so much fun with Underdog. You can and should too. Sign up now using promo code MHuddle to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun with your football priests. When you sign up with our promo code MHuddle, claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash immediately upon first deposit.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
All right, we come here back to the main topic at hand tonight, and that is just, hey, some wild card options at pick 20 outside of the kind of standard running back tight end fare. And here goes another defender, but it's also at a position that I would argue might even be a bigger need for the Denver Broncos. Jihad Campbell is the name here that Dylan asserts as a wild card. And the dude had some productivity. He's a sideline-to-sideline linebacker, as Dylan writes. And at the combine, he had the third best 40 times, Zach, with a 4.52 second.
Again, this isn't my number one priority in the draft. I want to echo what Michaela said earlier. I'd rather throw money at a veteran to solve the problem, but I can't be hypocritical, Chad. I've been potting with you for almost a decade, and during that time, I've been railing year after year for the Broncos to invest in the off-ball position. So if they go with Campbell, who's a sideline-to-sideline guy, he fits the athletic boxes, it's a pretty good pick to make.
2004 Broncos country was the last time this team drafted a true inside linebacker in the first round, DJ Jones. So it might be time, 21 years ago. It was a long time. But Jihad Campbell, to me, is a very interesting prospect, even though, the whole point of the philosophy in the NFL, we talk about this from time to time, is fill your immediate holes in free agency. So it frees you up to be more disciplined to your board and, in theory, take just generally the best player available. So I do expect the Broncos to fill most of their urgent needs. But you know what? By the time you get to this pick in the draft, he could be one of the best options. I could see them having him up there on the board. His current, the highest projection that he's been mocked from the credible sites out there is 19 overall, and currently is the 27th overall player, Zach, on the consensus big board. So that's Jihad Campbell. Then we get to the third guy, Elik Ayamanor. Man, I'm screwing it up today, but possibly, Zach, some Joker traits in this kid, even though he plays wide receiver. Eric he points out, hey, it doesn't have to be a running back or a tight end, although Sean Payton did specify it in his definition of a Joker as a running back or a tight end that can work the middle of the field. That's what he said. But this is a guy who, he's 6'2", Zach, 206 pounds. He ran a 4.44 at the combine, and you could use him definitely as a big slot and an outside guy. But when you look at his measurables, that kind of lines up here as a Sean Payton kind of prototype.
Yeah, I don't, receiver is the position we're not talking about because, like you said, it's going to be more than likely a running back or tight end to fill the Joker position. I have a couple other receivers I'm higher on, though, in this draft class. I like T-Mac. I like Igbuka a lot in the first round, trade back possibility, maybe, just like with Jihad Campbell. 20 might be too high. You don't like your board. You trade down a few spots, pick up some capital, and still fill a major area of need. So this is, we talk about plan A, plan B, plan C, etc. This AO Manor would be like plan E for me personally.
Yeah. Io Manor. This is off his. This one's hard for me for some reason. Most of the time, once I know what it is, Zach, I can get it.
Yeah.
But this is straight from his wiki pronunciation. Elik Io Manor. Io Manor. Io Manor. Not manure, manure. That's kind of weird. But he's really, really good, dude. He's really good. Interesting option for the Broncos. We'll come off of this for just a second and get some of your reactions. What do you think? You guys want to see a wide receiver at 20? Would you be stoked on that? Just curious. Phil wants to know, guys, your opinion on Stutzman, Demetrius Knight. When will they go? Well, let me do a little standby. His current, so starting with Knight, his current big board ranking is 81 overall. Highest he's been mocked is 76. So he's looking like a third round pick, but I could see him sneak up a little bit higher. I would guess a third round pick. And that's another thing, Zach. Like if you're at 20 and you end up with kind of the standard thing we all basically expect, and the Broncos take a Hampton or a Travion Henderson or something like that. Knight's one of those guys you could keep an eye on, end of day 2.
Yeah, I think it'll check in right around the third round, but Phil, it's so hard not to cop out or anything, but on March 3rd to project where they're going to go in late April, things and canon will change between then, but I would peg that about third round. Day 2 possibility for sure.
Stutzman is ranked 122 overall at linebacker. In other words, the 122nd or 122 overall. Highest he's been mocked, though, for what it's worth, 48. So I like him as well. But my personal favorite, kind of, I wouldn't quite call it a draft crush, but Carson Schwessinger from UCLA. I like that kid at linebacker. George Fox, good to see you, brother. Hope you are doing well, my friend. He wants to know, what's your opinion on tackle in the draft? Offensive tackle. The Broncos, look, they are pretty loaded right now in terms of how they've invested at offensive tackle. For what it's worth, I don't expect them to use any premium capital on an offensive tackle. And even, you look at their depth. Palczewski is a guy they like as a solid swing guy that can play either side. So, there's some decent options in this class, but I'd be lying to you if I were to tell you that I spent a lot of time at the combine trying to find those guys and talk to them, because look, you still take the best player available thing as the draft goes on. Don't get me wrong, but that's always in alignment with your needs. And I just don't see offensive tackle right now, Zach, being a huge problem for the Broncos.
Neither do I. And don't forget about, it's going to be a random name some of you might remember, is Quinn Bailey, who missed all of 2024 with an injury. I believe he's unsigned, but he'll be back on the cheap. The Broncos have liked him for quite a while, can play guard or tackle, so more depth there behind Palcho. If anything on the O-line, they're set at tackle, set at guard. They could use a center maybe to compete with Wattenberg. We talked about that yesterday though, Chad. I think they're mostly content, though, with their front five going into 2025.
George, so good to see you, bro. This is another wild card option. Like if you were to put, expand Dylan's article to 4 wild card options, Gray Zabel is definitely one of those guys. Like, I would not look that gift horse in the mouth. Very unsexy in terms of what moves the needle with fans, drafting an drafting an offensive lineman, period, in the first round, let alone it being an interior offensive lineman. But I'm telling you guys, this is one of those set and forget dudes that plays his first contract out, plays through a second contract. Like, he's a guy that is going to go to the league and probably you'll never see him hit free agency because teams don't want to lose cornerstone dudes. So if you could get that in the first round, because Genty's gone and Loveland's gone and Warren's gone, like I would arguably put Zabel, frankly, at the top of my wild card list for the Broncos, as unsexy as it is, at 20.
I think fans would riot if they took Zabel over a tight end like Loveland or whatever, but it's maybe the most pragmatic pick because nothing is going to help Bo Nix out more. Arguably, we could talk about tight ends and receivers, jokers, but his protection up front. A lot of times Wattenberg was the weak link. A lot of times Wattenberg was getting run over and was a little leaky in pass pro. Is that the number one priority that I would put on the Broncos wish list? No, I think they can coach Wattenberg. You can pick up maybe a veteran replacement for him or competitor for him. But Zabel would be a nice pick, Chad.
Kenny on Facebook, great to see you tonight. Thank you for being with us. Big Dog says, look at what Aya Manure did against Travis Hunter in 2023. Remember the big, massive superstar, the Heisman guy, the SI Sports, breakout star of the year, all that stuff, like superstar, and plays both ways. That's what he did. 13 catches, 293 yards when Stanford played CU. I think he had a couple of touchdowns too. So, or 3 touchdowns in that game. So yeah, that's a really interesting little addition to his resume is, okay, played at Stanford. We know what he did, how he produced, but how did he look going against some of the premium opposition? Best game of his career against the best corner in the NFL or in college football.
What I like about going Io Manor possibly is trading back a few spots and picking up maybe an extra second-round pick, Chad. And with that second-round pick, maybe you move back up in the first round for a Trey Henderson or a Marion Hampton. You can double dip by having that extra draft pick. So wouldn't be the worst-case scenario in the world giving Bo Nix a receiving weapon.
Elias Bernal, what's up, dude? Thank you for the super chat. He says, we know one position we won't be taking at 20, quarterback. We are set at quarterback finally. And he says, I swear I can spell, LOL. We got you. We got sometimes I've got the fat thumb syndrome as well when it comes to, texting out or it auto corrects in a way you didn't catch and you hit send. You're like, so totally get it. But yeah, it is a relief to not have quarterback be a problem. Like that's solved. And I think one of the, if there's a downside at all to it, Zach, it's only for media guys like us. And that is, it's kind of made fans, not you guys. If you're in the room with us now, or you're listening after the fact, I'm not talking about you, but like, the casual fans that they watch the games during the season, they'll read some of the articles as they're kind of thumbing through their Facebook or their Twitter account and all that. During the offseason, especially near the tentpole moments like combine, new league year, draft. Those guys aren't reading anything. They're like, we got our quarterback. Wake me up when, September rolls around. Other than that, Zach, there is no downside. Bo Nix, Broncos solved quarterback.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We've said it quite a bit on this podcast, maybe too often, Chad, but it's not great for business being so settled and content, but that's exactly what the Broncos are. It's foreign territory for people who cover the Broncos, fans of the Broncos, because for the first time in a decade, they're not looking for an owner, a general manager, a head coach, or a quarterback. They are completely on the right track.
The first year of MHH's existence was during the middle portion of the Peyton Manning era. And back then, man, the scrutiny was just as high as what it's been in the offseason pre-2025, because the fan focus was, hey, we've got this finite window with a quarterback who, when he arrived in Denver, was 36. What moves can we make? We kept coming up short after 2012. They sign a few guys, they go back to the well, get to the Super Bowl, lose. Dang it, come back in 2014 with a huge offseason, signing like D-Ware and Talib and Emmanuel, etc. That's the closest thing I can compare it to, but it's so different. You can also look at different facsimiles of the recent past and go, okay, at what point post Super Bowl 50 did it appear the Broncos kind of had something stable at quarterback? Closest thing I would say, Zach, is that first year with Russ, but the excitement of Russ coming via a big blockbuster trade turns that into an outlier. You can't really count it. And then 2019 coming out of Drew Lock. So 2020 coming out of Drew Lock's rookie year, he goes 4-1 in the 5 games he started. That was an exciting offseason, right? So it's like, oh, it looks like we've got our guy. Then we get hit with the pandemic. That's the year that the podcast really blew up for us was the off season of the the pandemic thing. But it's hard to compare it to anything else besides Peyton Manning, in all honesty. But the good news is it's solved.
It's so awesome, too, when you think about it, because if Bo Nix is your franchise quarterback and all signs are pointing toward he is, and you have that level of defense, then you're in a championship window. They already made the playoffs. They won 10 games when people said they wouldn't win more than 5. The Broncos are competing, and they have a window on Bo Nix's rookie contract. And now the finishing toppings just go into the equation, Chad. They're looking for pieces around the quarterback and not the quarterback. That's what's so amazing.
Todd jumping in with a super chat, and as you've heard us say it before, hey man, that's a dollar you worked hard to earn in your life, one way or another, and to donate it to the show, we view that as an enormous honor, my friend. So thank you, Todd. Really appreciate you, big dog. Glenn wants to know, hey, good afternoon, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott in Broncos country. What do you think of the Georgia center Jared Wilson with a late day 2 or day 3 pick? I would love him day 2. I would love him as a second round pick. You could get him in the 3rd. Great. Offensive. I know we just talked about this, but I got to look at it again. The consensus big board has him as a 4th round pick, but with how well he tested, Zach, I really doubt he lasts that long. So if you're the Broncos and he's there in the 3rd round, that's, again, to use the cliche, that's a gift horse. I'm not opening up his mouth and looking for signs of disease. I'm just drafting him if he's there in the 3rd round.
And also the scarcity of potential starting centers in the draft and translating to the NFL. So, yeah, I could see him rising up the draft boards. And, again, it wouldn't be sexy. Fans wouldn't like it over a running back or tight end receiver, what have you. But the Eagles showed the blueprint, and that's build the trenches on offense and on defense. So if the Broncos do that, we all cannot complain.
Great to see you, Glenn. Thank you, pal, for contributing to the conversation. Shout outs. I see Pearl in the house. What's going on, Pearl? Great to see you. Hope you're doing well tonight. Todd says, trying to put in the 1st Loveland, the 2nd Henderson, and the 3rd Jay Higgins. That would be a draft haul for sure, my friend. Cody Dubb jumping in again.
Thank you,
Thank you, pal. 2nd super chat of the night from the bona fide super chat superstar. He says, what do you guys think about Darius Slayton? I feel like he's cheap, but I feel he's better than the numbers he puts up, just stuck on a crap team. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, he's not a number 1 and arguably not a number 2, but a nice number 3 to have for sure. He can get open. I believe his hands are mostly reliable, Chad. He's had some injury concerns, but Cody's right here. He's been stuck in New York playing for a horrible Giants team for the last couple years. This is the receiver of note that Mike Kliss talked about in his article that I mentioned at the top of the podcast. This is a receiver that's not the name of a Devontae Adams or a Chris Godwin, but a guy that could add a veteran calming presence to an otherwise young receiving core, Chad.
It's kind of like a Josh Reynolds of this year.
Exactly.
You know, a guy that has some experience, fits a mold somewhat. It didn't work out with Reynolds, though, because he got hurt. And then, of course, it was involved in a really scary incident that he emerged from by the skin of his teeth. And we never really did get a full explanation from the Broncos on why they moved on from Josh Reynolds. But just for some background on Slayton, 6 years with the Giants, this last season amidst great, we'll call it quarterback instability, he had 39 catches for 573 yards, 2 touchdowns. His career high was the season prior, 50 receptions, 770 yards, 4 touchdowns. That was with 13 starts. So, I could see him being a nice little, hey, let's bolster the unit, raise the floor. But I'm not looking at him, Zach, as some game-changing presence that's going to come out of left field, so to speak, and elevate the Broncos.
No, but if you solve one area of need, then you don't have to press for a receiver in the draft. Like, you don't have to take an Iomanor, or you don't have to take a T-Mac or an Egbuka. I would like it, if only because we cannot have too many weapons for Bo Nix.
I'm trying to pull up here the mock. We can go through it and just kind of riff off of Eric's selections. But, these guys who's like Nick and Eric, their job is to do a mock draft at least once a week. Eric's been doing the 7-rounders. Nick does the 3-rounders. And just for the sake of not driving themselves crazy, especially in Eric's case, Nick's done it too. So both of them, they'll shake it up, the priority or like scenarios that they could see unfolding. And the last couple Eric did was more kind of like oddball. There was a worst case scenario mock. This is a post-combine mock that, Zach, if it unfolded this way, I think fans would be tickled. So let's just go through it. He has, as the first-round pick, Colston Loveland. And, he could be there. I think if he wasn't dealing with that recovery, there's almost no chance he'd be there at 20. But because of that, he might be there. So it's plausible, Zach, still, even though I'll be somewhat surprised if he's still there at 20.
Yeah, he's just such a good receiving weapon, though. When Sean Payton talks about a joker and what he wants in that position, you really look at Colston Loveland. Obviously, you would like Tyler Warren, but he's going to be long gone by the time 20 rolls around. This is a pick that every mock draft is projecting for Denver, and I'm not surprised Trickle went that way.
We move on here to the second round, and I love this pick. I mean, if your first two picks are Colston Loveland and the running back out of Tennessee, Dylan Sampson, in the second, OMG, you're bringing in right out of the gates two very high probability joker candidates. And Sampson was one of the more impressive guys we talked to at the combine. He did well on the field with his testing and the position drill, Zach. And again, I'll bring this up. He's also the guy that Woody Page tapped 2 months ago as the guy to watch for the Broncos in the draft.
This would pretty much cure the offense in 2 picks. I love the way Eric's thinking here, going Loveland and Sampson. Yeah, it's we had a previous comment of snatch up Trey Henderson in the second round. I don't think he's falling that far. He's going to be a day one guy when it's all said and done. But of the remaining running backs, Sampson could be the best bet. Good mix of size, speed, power, and no doubt the Broncos starter in 2025.
All right, we move on here to Eric's third round pick, Savion Williams. The wide receiver fits that. Sean Payton walks in and see just the prototype, 6'3", 220 pounds. What Trickle wrote is, quote, while he's a big receiver, Williams is more of an offensive weapon who can be deployed all over the formation, which is how TCU used him. Man, that's a pair of wide receivers for you, man. TCU had Williams and Jack Besh. In Williams' 2024 season, he saw snaps as a Wildcat quarterback, a running back, in the slot, on the boundary, and even in line, which doesn't include opportunities that he had on special teams. So one last thing, Zach, there's a rawness Eric writes to his route running, but Williams runs slants and crossers well, and he has the right mentality in contested catch situations where he caught 75% in college, including 8 of 9 last season. So your thoughts if that third selection happens to be 85 overall in the third round is Savion Williams?
You're getting your starting tight end of the future in round 1. You're getting your starting running back of the future in round 2. And then you're getting basically like a Taysom Hill clone or close to it in round 3. I mentioned the offense being fixed after 2 picks. This would add to it. And if you compare, Chad, if you put these 3 players on a projected 2025 roster, and then you compare that to what they had in 24, the lack of weapons, it's staggering. I really like the direction so far.
All right, we get to round 4, and Eric is taking another excellent player, Barrett Carter, the Clemson linebacker. And for what it's worth, based on the consensus big board, Carter is a late third-round pick caliber dude, and if he's there in the 4th round like this, maybe you just run it up to the podium, make that pick.
Every single pick so far is filling an immediate area of need and giving the Broncos a starter. I mean, home run so far, Eric. I love it.
Round 6, because remember, the Broncos don't have a 5th rounder this year. I mean, that could change if they trade back or whatever. So you jump straight to the 6th round where they have 3 selections. The first of which Eric has Upton Stout, defensive back from Western Kentucky, who he allows could well be off the board by the time that this pick rolls around. But he's a very versatile DB. He can work in the slot as like a Jaquan, successor, or you could play him at safety. Immediate special teams value. He's a little bit small, but as Eric writes here, feisty, athletic, physical, tough. Sounds like a guy that resonate with the coaching staff, Zach.
We saw what happens when you're relying on Levi Wallace and Damari Mathis. Behind Riley Moss in PS2, it gets a little murky. Behind Brandon Jones, it gets very murky right now. So I like it.
Then in the 6th round, the second 6th rounder, he has the Arkansas receiver with one of the coolest names in the draft, Isaac Tesla, who is kind of a slot guy that you draft to project hopefully in subsuming, taking over the Lil Jordan Humphrey role in Sean Payton's offense, Zach.
I imagine Sean Payton would do this to Bo Nix if the draft played out as such. Are you not entertained? This is not what you wanted. This is exactly what he wants and exactly what Bo Nix needs. I like it.
And then the last pick, defensive lineman out of Boston College, Cam Horsley. And I'll read a couple things Eric wrote here. True. That would be quite fitting, would it not, to land in Denver or the Colts for what it's worth. But Eric writes, this late in the draft, you're betting on traits to develop. Horsley has the size, strength, and athleticism to be effective as a gap-penetrating defensive lineman that Denver utilizes, etc. And, Zach, this is one of those positions that you got to start preempting. You got to start thinking into the future a little bit because all the guys you rely on are going to be a free agent after this season, one of whom is a free agent right now, DJ Jones.
Yeah, it's worth a shot in the dark, or at least a flyer that late in the draft. And the Broncos have not done so well with their young developmental linemen, but doesn't mean that you have to stop trying. I give this mock a solid A-, Chad. I think it filled every Broncos need with aplomb.
Oh, dude, we'd be gushing. If this is how it shook out on draft day, man, we'd be excited. Bo Nix, who, by the way, Sean Payton in talking with Peter Schrager at the Combine, off to the side, he's like, yeah, this time last year, we weren't over the moon about Bo Nix yet. We already knew that happened after the Broncos held his private workout. But Zach, the one interesting thing he said, in fact, to me, the only newsworthy thing he said was that they didn't think Bo threw the ball that well at the Combine. Not to say that he doesn't throw the ball well, but that relative to what he's capable of, he didn't have that great of a day at the Combine. And you can't really fault quarterbacks too much. You have to be real careful in reading too much into the Combine throwing stuff because these are receivers they don't have any experience with. So some of that chemistry stuff can make a quarterback look worse than he is. But at the same time, you get to his private workout or his pro day where he's throwing to guys he's been throwing with for, years in many cases. And you can go overboard thinking that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? It's going to actually take a little time for him to build up chemistry with his new guys.
It's easy for Sean Payton to say now, though, Chad, with the benefit of hindsight.
Sure.
He got his guy. The guy led him to a playoff berth, 10 wins. But he's also right in that we can't use the testing, the Combine as the end-all, be-all. It's kind of like Pro Football Focus in that sense. It's a tool, but it's not the conclusive authority on players, prospects. Just like Tez Johnson, Chad. I think he's going to have a better career than many people are panning him for right now just because he ran a suboptimal 40 time.
But remember, he was clocked in terms of miles per hour running routes as the fastest receiver at the Combine. So go figure on Tez. Carter jumping in. What's up, buddy? Thank you for the super chat. And by the way, guys, we're at the kind of 2-minute warning period. So any burning questions, supers, get them in the chat now. Carter says, do you think the Broncos will run it back with Luke Wattenberg, the center, or try to upgrade? My personal belief is it's a low-key need. Are they going to expend, with the exception of like a Gray Zabel in the first, or like we were, talking about earlier, on the interior, if you're in the 3rd round and Jared Wilson's there, you pull the trigger. Bow, for example, also, depending on where you're at in the draft. I could see it happening, but I don't think it's dictating anything, so to speak. Like they're confident with Wattenberg, but he was obviously, guys, the weak link on one of the top 2 or 3 best O-lines in the NFL last year.
Yeah, if we had to put like a numerical value on the need at running back, it'd be a 10. On tight end, it'd be a 10. On center, I think it's like a 4.5. We talked about it last night. My personal opinion is they're content running it back with Wattenberg. They like Wattenberg, but I don't think they love Wattenberg. If they can find an upgrade, they'll secure that upgrade. They'll turn over every stone. They might use the draft. They might sign a veteran to compete with him. But if they have to run it back for another year, so be it.
Carter, thank you, buddy. Guys, we have a few messages for you here. Don't leave quite yet, and then we're going to dip on out for the night.
Tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on X at Mile High Huddle. Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and don't forget about Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please, 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 very, very important that you subscribe, you like, you share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really does help us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Man, we don't have Scott with us tonight. He had a family thing. So I'm pretty sure we've gotten everybody who's thrown down stars, but guys, if we missed anybody tonight, I'm about to do the shout outs. Forgive us. We'll make it up to you. We don't have Mr. Producer with the second screen to help us make sure we catch them all. But a mile high salute and a special shout out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters helping us keep the lights on, like the Duchess, Michaela Parker from the top rope. So generous and literally helping us keep the lights on this particular off season. For real, that is as true and more true than it's ever been. So thank you, Michaela. The Papa Bear, Eric Flynn, Taylor Christensen, David Youngkin, Cody Dubb twice, Phil McLaughlin, George Fox, Elias Bernal, or is it Bernal? I'm not sure where the emphasis falls there. Todd Ostendorf. I said Cody Dubb. Carter, much love and respect, you guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your support. Last week was a blast. Zach and I had so much fun together at the Combine. In fact, when we go again next year, the big takeaway for me actually was not really Bronco related. Like, yeah, we learned some things and confirmed some suspicions, but actually the biggest takeaway for me, Zach, was next time we go, how to attack it the most efficiently to provide the most content, coverage, access to us while we're there, to the community. And so it was good to get that rep, because you and I hadn't been for a couple of years. And so it was good to get that back under our belt, because it's a priority. We're going to be doing that each and every year moving forward. So thank you guys for being along for the ride. Appreciate you.
Yeah, it's a privilege I got to go with you, Chad, and I'm excited for the next opportunity. Like you said, a learning opportunity situation. I don't know if we got this from Kenny, though, really quickly.
Oh, Kenny. Yeah, let's grab it.
What do you think of Maxwell Harrison at cornerback, 4.29 in the 40? Thank you, Kenny.
Love that speed, baby. Love that speed. Didn't talk to him at the Combine, so I'll have to get back to you on some specifics, specific thoughts. Ask us again on Thursday, my friend. And sorry, that's one of those where, again, we don't have Mr. Producer in the house. So thank you for letting us know, Kenny. And circle back with us on Maxwell Hairston.
That's going to do it for us tonight, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday. We're back on Thursday for another episode of the Mile High Huddle podcast. Have a great start to your week. We'll see you then. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.